Well, hello and welcome back guys to another one of my videos, and today we're going to be talking The Haunting of Bly Manor. So to get started over here, The Haunting of Bly Manor is the second season of The Haunting of Hill House. It's sort of an anthology series. But let me though get started by stating that the talent of Victoria Pedretti, the one who portrays the role of Dani, the lead character on the series, does leave a lot to be desired. I mean, throughout the season's run, I did feel like I'm not totally convinced of every single moment that she's trying to deliver on the season. Here's the interesting part though. Nell Crane on The Haunting of Hill House, she was also portrayed by Victoria Pedretti, and she did deliver really well over there, so I was kind of surprised by the lack of performance on this series, like in comparison. I mean, she's not totally bad, she's quite decent, she's just not as good as expected. That said though, we've got a lot of returning actors out of The Haunting of Hill House, including Carla Gugino, who does portray the narrator in this series, and we do find out who that narrator is at the end of the season. There's also Peter Quint. That actor portrayed one of the Crane siblings on The Haunting of Hill House. To get even further in our review though, we've got a season of 9 episodes. Each and every episode posed some questions. Some of them were answered a couple of episodes later, some even an episode later. But then the biggest couple of mysteries, those were answered on the final 2 episodes. Like what's going on with Bly Manor, why is it haunted? That was answered on the penultimate episode. And then there was the question of who Carla Gugino's character is, who the bride-to-be happens to be, or who the groom-to-be happens to be, because this is where you think one of them must be part of the story, and of course Carla Gugino's character must also be part of the story. I think the biggest bit over here that does tell you that Carla Gugino is a lot more than just a narrator of a story that she's heard before is the fact that she does have a dream or a nightmare of the lady in the lake at the very beginning of the season, like on the premiere. That's the first scene we see. So yeah, we've always known she's probably someone that we're gonna see within the story, down the road within the story that is, and by the end and before we get to those final moments as we figure out the fates of everyone in this story, we could tell who she is. But okay, let's start with the first episode. It all starts in 1987 with Dani applying for a job as an au pair, but bringing her own baggage as well to the ghost story, like she's got a ghost story of her own. We get an answer to that a few episodes later. The interviewer is the kid's uncle, portrayed by Henry Thomas, who portrayed the younger version of Hugh Crane on Hill House. So yeah, that's another returning actor. But long story short though, Dani heads to Bly Manor. She meets Owen, she meets Miles, she meets Flora, she meets the gardener, aka Jamie, and she also meets Mrs. Gross, aka Hannah Gross. There's of course a lot of creepiness to these two kids, and especially Miles, but we do get to realize later on down the road, why this weirdness, why this creepiness. But alright though, instead of breaking down episode by episode, I think it's better to take every single question that was posed on every single episode and kind of look into the answer to it. So number 1, there is the question of the weirdness with Miles and Flora, the changes that they go through, the moodiness and all of that stuff, and the answer is simple. We get to know that later on. It's all because of the temporary merging of the souls of both Rebecca Giselle and Peter Quint with their bodies over the course of the episodes. But while that explains the moment with the flowers with him and Dani, that explains as well the killing of Hannah Gross, that does not really explain the moment in school, killing that bird. And I think that was out of what he learned from Peter, finding the keys of someone. Peter does talk to him about the keys, the keys to people and whatnot, and that's even before Peter is dead. So that part he learned from Peter, like he was pretty much applying what he learned from Peter. Now the answer to the question of Dani bringing her own ghost to the picture, that's pretty much simple. That guy was her fiance, she breaks up with him, he gets out of his car where she is with him, and he gets hit by a truck or whatever, and that's pretty much really simple and really straightforward. And that's not a real ghost, not like the others. That's more of a self-inflicted ghost, like her guilt is basically having her project him all the way through. The other question over here is the question of the dollhouse and all the dolls, Flora's dollhouse, and the answer to that one is the fact that the dollhouse is modeled after Bly Manor. Now there are 2 explanations as to why Flora would know that Dani is in danger at some point because of the dollhouse. When they try to stop Dani, make sure that she's not taken by the lady in the lake. There's the first and simple explanation. The entire manor is haunted. It is possible that the dollhouse, that small piece in all of it, is also haunted. Like it's got a mind of its own. It does reflect what's going on the ground. But there is also explanation number 2. The ghost of that kid. The ghost of that kid is moving stuff according to what's going on in Bly Manor. That's also a possibility. I think that's the better possibility at this point. But okay, the third episode of the season, it does address the story of Rebecca Giselle and Peter Quint. The thing about the story is that it's really simple. Peter Quint is a man with a lot of troubles because of his parents. The man now in his 30s has been blackmailed by his mother, has been violated by his father as a child. So yeah, he's got a lot of troubles. Whatever he's doing, it's motivated by all the trouble in his life. You kind of actually sympathize with Peter Quint at some point down the road. But nonetheless, Rebecca Giselle falls in love with him. They have got a love story. He really loves her, by the way. He ends up trying to steal that heirloom that belonged to the kid's parents. He ends up caught the first time by none other than Hannah Gross, but then the second time he manages to do it. And while he's walking away with it, he's caught off guard by the kids. But not long after, like moments after, while he's there, the lady from the lake does get to him, does take him with her. He's her next victim. He's dead. And it is at that point that his soul is roaming the grounds of Bly Manor. Now he gets to communicate with Rebecca. He convinces her to share her body with him, like he would occupy her body, use it as a host in order to leave Bly Manor. They would leave together, live together. They are one person now, but nonetheless he ends up drowning her because it all fails. He wouldn't succeed at doing that. Now, there are two ways to look at this. He doesn't want to be alone in all of this. He wants her with him. He wants to be able to touch her, deal with her, like she's a ghost, he's a ghost. They're together forever. But at the same time, there's also the other thing, the selfishness of Peter Quint, the evil aspect to Peter Quint, and that's how you get a little bit confused. Like, should I consider him a real villain or just a stupid guy? But that, though, takes us to the other question that I was talking about earlier, the cracks in the walls that Hannah Gross keeps seeing. And the answer to that one is really simple. That's all about the well that she fell into. The fact that she caught Miles smoking at some point, that was not him, that was Peter Quint. Peter Quint did smoke. And the fact that he dropped her in the well, that was Peter Quint hating on Hannah Gross, wanting to stop him or wanting to control Miles and in essence controlling him. Now, it is pretty obvious that Hannah Gross died after the death of both Rebecca Giselle and Peter Quint. That's why she is at the bottom of that well. That's why he was able to kill her by using Miles, because his soul joined with the body of Miles, and that's how he managed to push her down the well. The whole situation with Hannah Gross is she was, throughout this series, trying to always keep herself sane, keep her memories intact. That's why we see her in her mind space, kind of talking to Owen and pretty much trying to remember who she is, trying to remember who Owen is, trying to hold on to her love for him. But this is not the only weird thing that you notice, the crack in the wall from the very first couple of episodes. There's a lot more that you notice. Hannah Gross never eats. Every time they're talking about dinner, every time they're talking about lunch, she's got an excuse not to eat with them. Like, I've already eaten, I've got to do something, I'm gonna eat later. So you kind of notice bits and pieces here and there. You're not really certain, but you do think, okay, what's going on with this woman? Why is this woman, who otherwise seems pretty normal, who otherwise seems pretty caring, acting so weird? In her mind, in her very own looped ghost dream, she keeps remembering that first meet with Owen, that first introduction, like that's what she's holding by, because we do know Owen loves her, and she does love Owen as well. Now, one of the things I did love about Owen is all the talk about identity and consciousness and getting past it and reaching transcendence, which is, by the way, in terms of TV, kind of a funny coincidence, considering we just got done talking about The 100 and the concept of transcendence on that series. However, though, Owen kept talking to Hannah during that conversation, or that looped conversation, about dementia or having dementia. The funny thing is, we knew Owen's mother did have dementia as well, so why? Why talk about that? I think at that point I kind of got a hint. Hannah might actually be dead and kind of holding by a thread, like she's just a ghost. Just like we know the case was with Peter Quint roaming the grounds of Bly Manor. Now, I do love a lot of the foreshadowing on this season, like Miles, the regular Miles, telling her at some point, Hannah, that he's got this dream that he hurt her. That was actually after Hannah died, like he basically dreamt what Peter did to her using his body, while possessing his body. But okay though, more questions and more answers after we talk about episode 6 real quick over here. Episode 6 is the background story of Henry. Why is Henry built this way? Why does he seem like he doesn't really care as much as he insinuates about his nephew and niece? So we know out of episode 6 that the guy's got his own ghost, his own demon rather, which is pretty much himself. That's all about the guilt. He did sleep with Charlotte. Flora is his daughter. Charlotte and his brother Dominic had to travel in order to rekindle their relationship, and if they didn't travel to India for that purpose, they wouldn't have died over there. So he kind of feels like he's the cause of all of it. He killed his brother, and he killed the woman that he loved, who does as well happen to be his sister-in-law. So yeah, that's all that's making him guilty. He does care for Flora, he's worried about her. By the end of the episode, he's leaving in order to head to Bly Manor because he's got this weird feeling something is wrong down there. But that though brings us to episode 7. Now by now, even though this has not been really revealed, we've got certain signs that the whole face loss is about a loss of identity, loss of memories, loss of knowing who you are when you die. You know that Hannah is dead, she keeps reminding herself of who she is, and then all these other ghosts in the house, they've got this loss of a face. The ghosts of Peter Quint and Rebecca Giselle as well do have this fear, you know, the fear of the loss. You could hear it in what they're saying, and you could feel it out of those expressions on their faces. The two of them, they keep talking about slipping. He talks about her slipping, which means that there is something that they fear would happen to them, and that kind of adds up to what we watch on episode 8. So yeah, this brings us to episode 8, which presents us with the story of the Lady of the Lake. The title of the episode is The Romance of Certain Old Clothes, in a reference to the part of the story about the clothes of Viola that she puts in that chest. Gonna get to that in a moment though, but that is also the title of a short story by none other than Henry James. Now Henry James, he's the author of The Turn of the Screw, on which this series is based, you know, The Haunting of Bly Manor, so it's kind of funny building two stories from the same guy into one story, like a horror story within a horror story, and basing one off of the other. I think that was a pretty decent, solid, and entertaining move on the end of the writers. Now for one thing, this explains why we see the burial grounds of the two sisters on the premiere of the season. I think we only see the name Lloyd once, but this explains it. But anyway, this is the story of two sisters, Viola and Perdita. You know, they are the heiresses of Bly Manor. Now on the source material, it's not really Viola that married Arthur first, but rather Perdita. On the source material as well, none of the sisters killed the other while she was ill. Perdita, however, being the first of the two sisters to marry Arthur, did fall ill over there. Perdita died, and then Viola came back in order to help Arthur raise her sister's kid. Viola as well, the original Viola that is, was jealous of her sister because she had a thing for Arthur when he married Perdita. However, over here it's kind of different. Perdita is never really jealous of Viola, but Viola is jealous of Perdita. Like still, that part is the same, except the roles are reversed because Viola over here is jealous over her husband, rather than Perdita jealous because she wants her sister's husband. But the whole thing though about that chest with the jewelry and the dresses, the financial problems as well, that is also by the book. It is though in the original source material that Arthur opens the chest and then he finds his second wife killed in a very ghostly fashion before that chest. But that and only a little bit more pertains to that story. The series over here takes that story and repurposes it, makes Viola into the Lady of the Lake in the story of Bly Manor. She's the one with the muddy footsteps, she's the one who has killed people repeatedly, and she kept trying to remember, trying to hold on to the memory of her daughter, like one day I'm gonna see my daughter, but instead she just kept killing people, again and again and again, until she only lost her memory, and all the memory that she had was very faint, very weak, of someone she's looking for, like I'm looking for a daughter. She does not even remember who that daughter is. But yeah though, we do get an explainer on the penultimate episode of the guy we watched on the first episode. You know, the ghost with the long pokey nose. That's pretty much the plague doctor that she kills on this episode. We do as well get an explanation about the faded child in Flora's room. You know, the one with the faded face, I mean. Everyone in this house, everyone in this manor, from Viola to Perdita to everyone that she killed and everyone that she did not kill but died on the grounds of Bly Manor, all of their souls are trapped over here. But okay though, before I move to the finale of the season and kinda explain that last bit at the very end, here's a funny piece of trivia. The original family name for the two daughters in the story written by Henry James was Willoughby, but then he revised it in a later version to change it to Wingrave. You could see the series has got a lot of inspiration from all over the place here, the work of Henry James. But that said though, we are on to the finale now, and let's go with a quick explainer. So whatever Peter did on the 7th episode of the season, that nefarious plan of his, it did work in favor of Flora and Miles in the end. Actually, it sort of worked in favor of everyone, because Dani, learning the entire trick of it's you, it's me, it's us, that helped her invite Viola in, and that basically released all the spirits in Bly Manor, including her sister, saved Henry before he was completely dead, and his spirit was just roaming the grounds, and of course, as I mentioned, saved the kids, because that's when she saves Flora from being drowned by Viola's ghost. But okay though, everyone leaves Bly Manor, that's the end of it, or that seems to be the end of it. Only later on we get an update from Owen. He's got his own restaurant. Hannah's picture is hanging in there on the wall. We get an update on Henry and the kids from him. Owen has met them. The kids don't remember a thing about Bly. They do not even remember Hannah's name. They blocked it all, or it all faded away. The fear, the horror of Bly Manor, all of that would fade away, and especially when you think of the trauma caused by something this major to kids their age. All that these kids remember is having lived in this place, Bly Manor. But all that Dani did though, inviting Viola in and whatnot, all of that did not stop the whole thing, did not end the whole thing, because the rage is still in there. Viola is in there, and she does catch up, enough for Dani to see her in her reflection, enough for her to almost turn violent against Jamie. Dani would become the Lady of the Lake as she drowns herself, as indicated on the finale, a better Lady of the Lake though, one who would not kill, who, unlike Peter Quint, would not accept Jamie's plea to use her body as a host. Now, it is earlier in that episode when I started realizing that it is probably the end for Dani, that she's a goner at some point, that I started thinking it is possible that Carla Gugino is basically portraying Jamie, an older version of Jamie. Now later on, and close to the ending of the episode, that is actually revealed. She is the gardener. The gardener would spend her nights hoping to see Dani's face. That's what Carla Gugino says. The narrator of the story even leave her door open. The whole Jamie thing does seem more real than ever now, because we've seen Carla Gugino's character at the very beginning of the premiere. Like the opening scene, she wakes up from a nightmare related to the lady in the lake. She also does leave that open door. That open door policy is up for her at the hopes that she mentions over here, the return of none other than Dani. It is from there that you start connecting the dots, start thinking, okay, the man we see on the premiere toasting to the happy couple, the bride and groom to be, that's pretty much Owen. That's proven at the end of the episode. The older man over there does seem like he's possibly Henry Wingrave. That's kind of proven as well by the end of the finale. Of course, we do get to know as well that young guy listening to the story, not talking about the groom over here, talking about the other guy in the room, that's her brother, that's Miles. The whole thing is revealed when Flora does state that her middle name is Flora, but also believes that sharing a name with that story, that's probably all a coincidence. The lack of an English accent was a little bit tricky with realizing that bride is Flora, but it does make a lot of sense considering both her and her brother did spend the majority of their lives in America. That made a lot of sense at that point. However though, having said that, my work here is done, so let me know in the comments down below what you thought of Bly Manor. I would personally give it a rating of an 8.5 out of 10. My only problem, as I mentioned, was the acting by Victoria Pedretti, but nonetheless, and to be fair, it kind of did improve closer to the very end. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it one of those much appreciated likes, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a new video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, thank you so much for tuning in to this review, stay safe, and have a great day.